we will get everything into place. All right. I think I've tied in YouTube at this point. Let's see. And there's our group in the IEP section. I hope everybody is doing well. We're having kind of several things go on in my house this evening. So unfortunately, I have decided to end up with a cold right at the end of cold, flu, and RSV season. So I'm like slowly dying over here. But you should be able to hear me clearly. But please excuse me if I have to like blow my nose at any point. Matter of fact, grab a couple of tissues. Okay. So good evening. My husband currently is out this evening and at the hospital getting some tests run. And so if he's admitted, I'll have to leave early this evening. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. I'm still waiting to hear back from him on what's going on. So let's go ahead though and kind of get started in some of the things, because again, in the IEP/504 assistance group on Facebook, that's where I guess like my main group is. And so that's where all the information is that I pull usually for chats in the evening, unless I'm getting a lot of comments. So I did want to talk about a few things. Let me see. All right, so people are finding it this evening. So hopefully everybody will be able to find us and get tuned in here in just a little bit. Matter of fact, some of these I haven't even had a chance to read yet. Wow. Okay. So even I'm surprised. So I've been a little busy and I haven't been able, you know, like I was sick. I've been sick. And so I can't say that I've been tuned into the group today to kind of read what all is going on in here. But there's a great post. And I think this is one of the really good reasons. If you have not, if you're not familiar with it, you can do a FERPA request. And in doing a FERPA request, do know that you can pull emails. Now, the school may tell you that you can't, but you can. And if the school doesn't have them for some reason, because like my husband's school, where he works in Arizona, they only keep emails in their school's database, like locally, where they could pull it up, only for 3 months. And then after 3 months, they remove them off the database. But do realize, and often the teachers don't realize, these are public records. They don't just disappear. And it's public information. So if you cannot get them through the FERPA request, and there's something called the letter to HUSC. So the letter to HUSC helps emphasize the point that under a FERPA request, that includes emails. But like I said, if they're giving you too hard of a time, sometimes it's just not worth arguing over. And what you can do is do a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, and get the emails that way. And why do you want the emails? Well, it can be really enlightening as to what's going on. So one of the members in the group, Dawn, wrote, she said she had an update for her story and said, I got the emails, very eye-opening. So Mom is a drama queen. Mom only wants attention. There's nothing wrong with her daughter, although she has a neuropsych report that she had paid for it independently that says something completely different. And she said that Mom is harassing the school district by sending the neuropsych report to the teachers and staff so they know what's going on. And this is the best one. Like she's saying, like the best comment out of all the things that she had gotten was that we wouldn't want to admit that we screwed up. It's really amazing some of the things that are in emails that are at your school district, and that what these staff are writing back and forth to one another. So I don't know why, they're under the mistaken impression these are private communications. They are not private communications whatsoever. And they are subject to FOIA requests and also FERPA requests. So it's really good to know this, because if you do need to go to due process, one of the things that you will want to do is to have these email records pulled, especially over like any events or anything that's gone on where, I don't know how best to put it, just kind of a dust up, you know, with the school. Like there was just kind of a lot going on. Those are a great time to sit there and to do those FERPA requests and find out, you know, what are they all saying to each other. Oh goodness. So, and so Dawn, just to kind of go back, so Dawn's been fighting to try to get her child a 504, and she already has her private neuropsych evaluation, which would be considered essentially a private or parent paid IEE, and the school isn't recognizing it as such, and that's sort of where she's running into this problem. So, oh, hi, Jackie. Thanks for joining this evening. Anyways, people were really surprised by all these comments that she was getting in these emails, but I'm telling you, this happens way more often than you would think. And it can be really helpful when you go to due process to kind of to show the school's hostility to you, or their, I would say inability. It's not inability. It's their unwillingness to essentially comply with law. Let me see. So there's a lot of comments in that thread. I'll have to get in here and I'll have to comment too here in a little bit, because like I said, I haven't been on. I don't know if y'all can tell. I have a cold, so I'm a little sniffly, but hopefully I don't sound too bad. Okay, so Jennifer asked in the IEP group, she goes, how long did it take to write up or finish writing an OCR complaint? And she said, I filed a year ago and did the interview last month. So it depends on how backed up the office is. Normally, they should have them done within a year. But if they're not done within a year, then realize that they should be done as soon as possible. And if you had the interview, then I would think that means they're sort of in, you know, kind of wrapping things up. So I would expect to hear something in the next 3 to 4 months. It does take the Office of Civil Rights quite a while. Their staff has been cut back, and I know that they tend to have a high caseload. So it can take up to 3 years from start to finish to get something done, depending on which region you're in. So hopefully it won't take that long for a resolution. And to me, it sounds like you are right there at getting everything completed. Let's see. See who else has joined us. Hi, LaTanya. Hi, how are you? I hope you guys are having a good evening. Let's see. So Kendra was saying that we are almost at the deadline for his evaluation and testing for special education and his BIP. The redirection and choices program, the teacher in that program, the teacher was out today. So he wasn't able to meet with her today for positive reminders, choices, and behaviors. And the child has ADHD and impulsivity. So today he reverted back to his, you know, kind of peer pressure and impulsiveness, right? I mean, it is his kind of impulsivity. Usually in ADHD, they get children into trouble. So he was placed into an in-school suspension for 4 days because he was, the boy sitting next to him in music, they kind of had an inappropriate kind of talk and conversation. So just know when the teacher isn't there, unfortunately, the school still can give your child punishment. Now they did in-school suspension. Like I said, it was for 4 days. But there's not much you can do up until you start getting to where there's 10 days or more in a school year. And then you can have those manifestation determination hearings. Let's just kind of finish reading this post. I don't think there was a whole lot more in there for me in particular to answer on that one. Let's see. So this is a good question. So Sarah had asked, when you request progress report monitoring data, what form does it come in? So normally it's whatever form the school has already set up and has been sending it to you. Often that'll be in like some kind of grid format, you know, talking about the trials. So when you do your goals, right, it'll say like 3 out of 4 or 80% or whatever. And so it'll kind of give that as the measurement. And if, let's see, so she was asking, can she get it in percentages and then kind of have them like graph it so that you can have a good visual of it. Now, some schools do give you the progress monitoring data as a graph, and so you got this visual. If they don't, it's okay. You can graph it yourself. And so if you have any questions on that, please let me know. But there are things like Open Office that you can use, or what is it called? I think it's called Google Spreadsheets, that you can create graphs in that also. And if you need help with that, please let me know and I will get you the information, or we can work together and help get that information graphed for you. So that's completely doable. Let's see. So Sandra is on, and Sandra says, can you do a FERPA and a FOIA request at the same time? What needs to be included in the letter? So that's a really good question. Yes, you absolutely can do both at the same time. And I have like a sample FERPA request letter that you can use. So I do have that available. And for the FOIA requests, there is actually FOIA requests for every state. Like there's sample letters out there for every state. So if you let me know your state, what I will do is find you your state's FOIA sample request letter. Now, do realize both for the FERPA requests and FOIA requests, they can charge you for the information that you're requesting. So it can get really expensive. So you want to make sure if you are going to do that, be specific in your request so that, you know, it's not generating 200 pages, but, you know, hopefully it's 20 pages or less of information that it's generating for your request. So just do realize you do have some control over that by kind of the keywords and what you're specifically requesting. So Amber, hi Amber. She's on to this evening. Sheila asks, said 2 times, I have requested the data that was used in the progress monitoring for my children's IEP. Each time I was told that the teacher no longer has that information because they are not required to keep that data. And then it says, so I asked the teacher to just explain how the present levels and base scores were determined, and my requests were met with excuses. I requested and restated for a 3rd time 2 weeks ago, and I've not gotten a response. Is there information that the teacher should be able to provide? Absolutely. So you should, and it should be in your IEP. Now, it may not. Like, I don't remember who it was that I just helped. I know she's in North Dakota because I had found the information in North Dakota's IEP manual. But it talks about progress monitoring data. And in your IEP, you should have information in there that specifically states, you know, like how often are you going to receive progress monitoring data? And for most IEPs, most states, most places, what they do is they set that to whatever your school's grading period is. So whether it's 6 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever, they set it by whatever that grading period is. And you absolutely want that information. The school absolutely should have to produce it. They absolutely should have it. And I don't know why they wouldn't, because how can they prove that your child achieved these goals, right? Without the data, they have no proof that your child has been making progress. So the only progress that you would have at this point, I would imagine, is to look at whatever state testing that's been done. So normally, I don't know how old, because you didn't say, Sheila, like how old your child is, but often what they'll do is that your child has to have the state testing every year. Well, when they need state testing every year, right, the state testing kind of tattles on the school, and it tells like your child's progress. So even if they are giving you progress data, but then you look at your child's state testing and see like it doesn't match and it doesn't make any sense, then you need to call the school out on that and say, hey, what I'm seeing here, does it make any sense? What's going on? And you absolutely can do that. And I will post the law here in a little bit for you, Sheila, on where, the school should be keeping that data and should have it available for you. So Sandra said that she's in Vermont, and yes, I can absolutely get you that. What I'll do is I'll post it in the group, because I know I have a few other people in the group too who are from Vermont, and they may find that information helpful also. Okay. So, and then Sandra was saying, can you request emails? Absolutely, you can request emails. And matter of fact, that's what I was saying earlier. So under a FERPA request, you should be able to get emails. Now, if the school gives you a really difficult time, you can either kind of battle, because there is guidance in something called the letter to HUSC. And so in the letter to HUSC, it explains what all is considered information under FERPA. And emails are included. So if you can't get them that way, like if it's becoming too difficult to get them that way, then what you can do is to file a FOIA request with your state Department of Education, and then list in there the information that you're seeking. And like I said, both for the FERPA request and for the FOIA request, you need to make sure that if you're wanting like printed copies of everything, make sure you're as specific as possible, okay, when you do these requests, because they can charge you for printed copies. Now for FERPA, it says that if it's a hindrance to you financially to get the information, then they can't charge you. And so what I mostly hear is that schools will use, do you qualify for free and reduced lunch? If you do, then they won't charge you. So just kind of throwing it out there for something for you to consider. And then also know, like I said, I have a cold, so sorry. My poor nose. All right. So also know that if you decide that if you want to do the FERPA request, so what they're doing is they allow you access to the records. So you're allowed access to go and view the records. That doesn't mean a printed copy. That just means you can view them all. And that doesn't cost anything. And so it is nice, because you potentially could sit down with everything and, kind of like look through everything and flag specific things that you're wanting and just get copies of that. So those are all bits and pieces there to that answer. Do know, again, if you want more information, ask me in the group, okay? And I will make sure that I post links to help you with that and to get all that information together. So Laura, hi Laura, how are you? She says, I was told the raw data was a memory aid when I requested it. I believe this is incorrect. It is incorrect. So the raw data should be the same data. I mean, like, I don't understand why it would be different. So I'm a little confused by that answer. Now, if the teacher is saying they're just notes that she made, they're not required to keep notes. However, that doesn't mean they're not required to keep data. So where's the data? If you have the notes, then where's the data? So I'd still be questioning this and sort of, what's going on. Oh, and then Sandra was saying, so in Vermont, so they use, what was that called? It's F&P, and I know what it is, but it's a reading assessment. And in the reading assessment, she's saying they're throwing these away, which I don't get why they would do that, because that's their proof, right, that your child is doing well. So if they're doing that, they still have to generate data. So where's the data, right? And if they're not generating data, then they potentially could be denying your child FAPE, right? They have no proof. They're providing your child FAPE. So let's just look at it that way, right? If you can't produce the data, then how can they prove they've provided FAPE? So that's what I would want to know, right? Let's see. So Sheila was going on to say she is a sophomore, and I'm fairly certain that the present levels were fabricated, and some of the goals were not even addressed. And she said that she's in Missouri. So here's the thing. If you've got that going on, here's what you do. So you go back to the school, and you're like, great. When was the last time that she was fully assessed? If she was fully assessed less than a year ago, you can then ask for an IEE. If not, then you can ask for new assessments. And then I would be curious to see what they have for present levels, because that's what you base your goals off of, right? I mean, the idea of, and you have to remember too, right? So in different states, it's called different things. It's like plop, plap, plaff. There's a lot of names. They're all present levels. It's all what they mean. And so they're just looking at, like, how is your child functioning right this minute? And the idea behind that is because we're going to look at that, and then we're going to determine goals. And we need to determine what is considered appropriately ambitious goals for your child for a given school year. And you can't do that if the present levels are wrong, right? Because that's what you're basing it off of. So I would think you would catch that either in state testing, or you would catch it in some other assessment they've given her, or psychoeducational assessments, or, I mean, there's several ways I think you kind of catch, like, that she's not where they're saying that she's supposed to be for her present levels. And so, like I said, in the group, we can talk about that more, or you can ask if you have more questions on that. But that's sort of where I would look to go, is to kind of, because if she's a sophomore, then she definitely should be doing some kind of state testing. And the state testing, again, that should help kind of be part of that data that goes into what you're looking at when you turn around and make your IEP and you make your IEP goals. So what's going on there? You know, is that showing that she's not where they're saying her present levels are? So Julie was saying, she goes, can I ask that grades not be used to show progress towards goals? Yes, because often I don't know, I don't think I've ever really seen grades used as shown as progress towards goals. How does that work? What are the goals that they're using for that? Because here's my question on that. Grades don't matter. A child can have an IEP and make straight A's. They can be a gifted student and still have an IEP. And FAPE clearly says that a child can be advancing from grade to grade. And they're still, if they're a child, they're considered and have tested as a child with a disability, then they still qualify for FAPE. So using grades is not an appropriate measure of progress. It isn't an appropriate measure to see if your child is gaining FAPE, because a child can be passing and still be entitled to FAPE. That's part of the law. And I can post that too in the group. And I think I have posted it just recently in the group. So if I did, you can potentially look under like hashtag FAPE and then find information there. So Avani was saying, I often miss your live videos, which are so helpful. Well, I'm sorry you've been missing them. I am going to try to see about doing another live video during the week at some point. And then I'm also working on trying to get things together so that I can do a podcast. But I've got a lot of things going on right this minute, so I may not be able to kind of get all of that up and running until the summer because I have AESA Academy going on along with the EESA conference that we're hosting this summer. So I'm hoping once summer comes and then, you know, like all that stuff kicks off, and then all of a sudden I'm going to have like this extra free time. And also in the summer, usually this group quiets down, and that's because everybody's out of school, right? So the parents aren't terribly worried, and the comments and everything slows down in the IEP group too. Though, do you know, I am working on putting training together, and one of the things I would like to do is to kind of have two different cohorts of, you know, two different classes essentially of training going on this summer. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm working with Terry to develop all of that material. So I'm excited about that. So Sandra was saying because they wrote the data in report card or in the system, but I don't have actual proof. All right, it's just really weird. So you have to really watch the schools, okay? Like people don't understand when they put together these IEPs, when these IEPs are written, okay? Trying to think of the best way to put this. Okay, so hopefully you guys have had experience with renting an apartment, because this to me is sort of the same thing. So when you go to rent an apartment, right, you got to read that lease over very carefully. You got to make sure you do everything. You got to make sure you do that walkthrough. You better make sure you document any damage in that place, because when it's done, they're going to hold you liable for everything. So the IEP, I kind of feel, is almost like the same thing, right? It's our legal document. So you need to make sure you read carefully, like everything that's in there. Read it super critically. Thankfully, what I used to do is I used to, you know, I did technical writing and I did technical work. And I often worked with consulting groups, and they would send me their documents. And so I was a technical editor. I was a technical reader, and I would sit there and I, you know, read their things critically and then go through and make corrections. Well, it's the same thing you need to be doing with these IEPs. Because of how the goals are written, there may not be much you can do, but that doesn't mean that you can't call a new IEP meeting and change the goal. You absolutely can. And that's part of the law also, right? Is that parents are entitled at any time, and the school at any time, to call another IEP meeting and to discuss the IEP. They have to at a minimum of once a year. But if you need to reconvene the IEP team before that year is up, you absolutely have the right to do that. And I will tell you, if you do that, please make sure you make a parent agenda. You know, think of it like as a formal meeting that you're having, like a business meeting. You want to make an agenda. You want to go in with that, enough copies of that agenda that you can hand it out to everybody. But you want that agenda because I often hear parents complain the schools, you know, kind of hijack their meeting, right? Like the parent went in and they wanted to talk about XYZ, and instead the school district's like, oh, but our concerns are ABC. And you're going, wait a minute, I called this meeting. I want to address what my concerns are. Well, one of the things you can do to help make sure that happens is to make that parent agenda, and to, you know, write down what everything is that you're wanting to say in that meeting. And with, you know, you've got everything on your agenda. And so when you start the meeting, hand it out and tell everybody, you know, I called this meeting. This is what I want to discuss. And then get started into it. And then when they try to sidetrack you, what you say is, I thank you for your input, but what we're going to do is we're going to write it over here on this sheet of paper. This is like our parking lot. Say teachers are really familiar with this concept. It's called parking lot. If you haven't ever heard of it, Google it. They use it a lot in educational circles. So you're telling them we're going to put it over here in the parking lot. And then if we have time at the end of the meeting, we'll discuss it. If not, then we can set another date. And then we'll have another meeting. And then we'll finish discussing these other areas of concern. So you just want to make sure that they don't run off with your meeting and that you get a chance to, have a full say in whatever it is that you want to say. And then what's nice is these agendas also help document what are your concerns, right? It's all right there. It's in your agenda. You keep bringing them and saying, here are my concerns, right? So I like agendas a lot. As a matter of fact, I even use them for my children's doctors. My doctor loves me because I go in, literally, I'm not even joking. I go in with an agenda when my children go to the pediatrician because I have 3 of them. And so it's a way to make sure I ask all the questions for each child. I don't forget anything. The doctor loves it because I bring a copy for her. So she makes notes, she leaves it in their file, and then she hands it off to her office staff. So it's a great idea if you've never done that, and especially if you have more than one child you take in at a time to the doctor. They love you for that, I promise. If they're a good doctor, I should say, right? Not every doctor appreciates you telling them what you want and what you want to do. But do realize, though, having an agenda really helps, you've written it down. What are your concerns? And also Avani was asking, she goes, is there a page where I can go over all the live videos once you're done? So yes, actually I started a YouTube channel and I actually am kind of simulcasting this on YouTube. And I have found that on YouTube, when I do a YouTube live, apparently if you're on a mobile device, according to my oldest son, you can't do anything. You can't comment, which I think is really weird. But I do have all of these on YouTube, so they are there. And part of the reason I did that too is because these Facebook Live videos I do in the group, they're not readily shareable. And so having them on YouTube makes them, I think, a lot easier to share with others and to watch on the go or whatever. So yes, they are on YouTube also. And I will share that link here when I am done. So Sandra was saying, like I said, so they had written it into the report card, that the report card was going to be part of the data. So I would have that removed. I would tell them that grades are not reasonable data to use. And then I would point out the fact that FERPA says, right, a child can be passing from grade to grade and still be considered a child with a disability who's in need of FERPA. So it's not a good parameter to use. And I don't even know, I think she's saying they were using that for reading. Yeah, it looks like it's for reading. So what I would do is potentially, like I said, ask for an IEE. If you truly believe that, they don't have good data, that the data they're giving you is not accurate, your best bet is to ask for an IEE. Now, do know when you ask for an IEE, please be aware, the school's only responses should be one of 2 things. And there shouldn't be any other response. It should be one of these 2 and nothing more. One is to go ahead and grant you your IEE. Okay, so that's one response. The second one is to take you to due process, where they then have to prove that the evaluation they initially did was adequate. Since this is needing more data, it's like, I'm not sure quite how that falls. I don't know, too, if you have the possibility of getting her privately assessed. Sometimes that's really helpful because then you can start bringing in these private assessments and going, no, this isn't congruent with what I'm seeing in these private assessments, right? So, and Avani, so she said, if the school psychologist and the IEP team won't agree to do a full observation and take data on social skills, class participation, play skills, physical, so do you mean like what they're physically able to do. So like physical therapy, is that, potentially the need for physical therapy. And she goes, if they won't take the data, what else can I ask for, and what is it called? Well, so there is always, like, in the world of psychoeducational assessments, like, the sky is the limit. There's a billion different tests, and you can and should ask for, like social skills, and ask her to be assessed for social skills, be assessed for speech therapy, to have her pragmatic speech, figurative speech, social, like interaction speech skills assessed, along with, so class participation, they should observe that. They should have observations. I don't know. You said full observation. Does that mean they did an observation, but it wasn't very long? Or it wasn't across different class settings, like they did it one time for 30 minutes and that was it? For play skills and physical, I'm assuming you're talking about gross motor skills. So if you're talking about gross motor skills, then you're talking about physical therapy kind of things. So, because like gross motor tends to be physical therapy, and then fine motor tends to be occupational therapy. Though, if your child is kind of needing work on like core strength and that sort of thing, occupational therapists do that kind of work. And part of it is because for a child to write, I didn't know this for the longest time. I thought it was really great when I had an occupational therapist explain this to me. So part of the reason a child may have poor writing skills, I mean, most of them are their visual spatial problems. But after that, it's all about the core strength. So it's the core and sitting up straight, and then your shoulders and the strength in your shoulders and your arm, all the way down to your hand. All of that plays a role in your ability to write. And that's why occupational therapists will do that kind of work. And it said, so they should be collecting that data, like I said. And let me go back through the law, because I know in the law, it does talk about the need to gather existing data. And part of the existing data is to do an observation. And like I said, sorry, because I'm all sick. So like my mind's not working as well. So Josephine said, I'm being told to wait until next school year to have my son tested. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but what does that mean? So why? Was your son tested less than a year ago? Because if so, then that's part of the reason why they're telling you, because they're not required, and you cannot make them do another test in under a year unless you ask for an IEE. So that's one reason. Or it could be that the triennial is coming up. And so if that's the case, then they're just wanting to put it off. But you know what? You don't have to. But you do have to submit a written request, right, to have your child assessed. So make sure that if you are asking, that it's not just verbally requesting, that you send in that written request. Because it's kind of like I was saying earlier with the IEP, right? And like, unless it's in writing, it's never happened. So always make sure you write everything. Write it down, write it, and then send it to several people. So that way too, because I've heard of this happening many times, where the parent only sent it to, say, like the teacher. And then the teacher was like, oh, I didn't get it. Oh, oops, my bad. It was in my inbox. Or it got sent to the principal and they didn't see it or something. So it's always better to send it to multiple people. Then it's a little less of a concern, right? Hi, Terry. How are you? Glad you could join us this evening. So Sandra is saying it does work really good. So that's good. Terry was saying, after the meeting, follow up with everything that was agreed to. Yes. So, and I mentioned this a lot, but I'm going to tell you guys again, okay? Because it's like, seriously, it's so important. We're wanting to create a document trail. And you hate to think that You got to, like practice CYA, right? But that's essentially what you have to do. You have to create that document trail so that you have something to point to if things do go poorly and you need to go to due process, so you can say, hey, the school was informed. I notified them of my concerns. I told them. I went through these remedies. I tried to work with them. I did all of these things, and here's the proof I have to show this. And you can't do that if you don't follow everything up. So school staff, especially administrative staff, are often taught by school lawyers to only give information verbally, not to send emails. And that's because then there's no documentation. So anytime that you have a verbal discussion with school staff, administrative staff, your teacher, whoever, always go that evening, go home, and then type up the conversation and send it to them and say, thanks for talking to me earlier today. Here's my understanding of our discussion. It is da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. If this is wrong, this is the important part too, right? If this is wrong, please email me back and let me know, right? Because make sure that your understanding was their understanding. And so you're like, hey, please write me back and let me know if I wasn't right and how I interpreted what we were doing, and then see what happens. But that creates that document trail, right? That takes your verbal conversation and now we have it in writing. And that's what you should always do. And this includes your IEP meeting. So at an IEP meeting, if you do not record the meeting, or you cannot record the meeting, okay? Because like in Florida, for instance, they actually have a Supreme Court case where, no, you're not allowed to record the meeting. I find that outrageous, but that is what it is. The only way that you can maybe record the meeting is if you have a documented disability yourself in which you need to record the meeting so that you can be a full participant of the meeting. So that is one way around it too. So if you have a documented disability, it is potentially possible. You may still be able to record the meeting, but you'll get a lot of pushback on that. So just be aware. That doesn't mean that you're not right. It doesn't mean the law's not with you. You'll just get a lot of pushback. But hopefully you can record the meeting. If not, then make sure you take copious notes, that you, at the end of the meeting, talk to whoever, because somebody on the school district side, they're taking notes. Make sure that your notes and their notes match. If you can, ask them to give you a copy of their notes, so that you can go home that evening and again, sit down, read through everything carefully, make sure everything matches up. And if you have any questions or concerns that evening, immediately write an email and let them know what your concerns are. So there are so many times that, parents will walk away from an IEP meeting and then later they get the finished IEP and they're like, wait a minute, this isn't what we agreed to. Well, so what happened is, right, like the school district's notes and the parents' notes, they all weren't on the same page. The parents didn't get a copy of the school district's notes. So they didn't know what was going on. The parents didn't share their notes with the school district. So there was nothing else to the school district to compare to. And this is how these misunderstandings are generated. So it works best, like I said, if you can, to please make sure that you share notes, give them a copy of your notes if you can, or tell them, hey, you take it in there, you can make a copy. And I, just need the originals back. And then I'd like a copy of your notes so that you can have all this information yourself. All right. Let's see. Oh, and so Avani was saying PT, so physical therapy. And she said, during lunch recess and overall peer play and communication with peers at age appropriate level. So yes, that's just general social skills. And those are something the schools should be working on. And I had brought it up before that it's something that should be worked on, partially because what does IDEA state? Like, what's the purpose of IDEA? So the purpose of IDEA literally is for a child to be able to be employable and to be able to live independently. So to be able to live independently, they have to be able to navigate and go around into the community. So between employment and independent living, right, that kind of says you need to have good social skills. If you don't have good social skills, you're not going to be able to accomplish those things, especially in the employment aspect, right? That is one of the biggest reasons why children with disability, when they are done with high school and kind of move on and potentially are looking for a job, one of the biggest hurdles that holds them back is a lack of good social skills. And there's a lot of, complex social nuances as children kind of progress from being children essentially into adolescence. And so it's really important for them to get those social skills and understand those social nuances. So Avani said, do they take IEP meeting notes? So yes, the school district absolutely does take IEP meeting minute notes. Somebody over there is. And she said, can I ask for a copy of the full meeting notes? Absolutely. Now, they may not share them with you. Now, I don't know why they wouldn't, but you never know. They may not. But it's your child, your information, it's pertaining to their IEP, it's what they're about to base writing the IEP up off of. So yes, they should give you a copy. If not, then I would be like, hey, I need a finished copy of the IEP. So I know states do it differently. This is, again, it's a little bit of a problem in the fact each state can do things differently, okay? So in Arizona, we actually were making the IEP like as we were going along. We were doing it electronically. And so everything was being done as we were going through it electronically, so that when I got to the very end, we were finished and it was all written. But not every state does that. So if they're not doing that and they're not giving you a printed copy at the end, then somebody should be taking notes, because that means somebody then needs to go and write this up. And that's what you're looking for. You're just looking for a copy of their notes. So, and then Avani said, let's see. Oh, no, she was saying that was the notes. So I got that covered. Terry said, my bullying case was tried to be said that it didn't exist. So her son was bullied by another child, and the school was saying that wasn't what was going on. And she said, now that the bullier, the child who was bullying, has been removed from the class, and that's it. And let's see. And she was saying that should be done. Then asked for what I felt was needed, an investigation and keeping my child safe. And so she was saying that she didn't mention about IDEA and FAPE, and she'll be sending a letter out tomorrow. Terry, I think you probably have beaten them into submission when you got the NAACP involved. I think you're probably good on that one. So Avani was saying at the end of the meeting. So yes, ask for the information at the end of the meeting. They should have all of that put together. As a matter of fact, you can even ask the beginning of the meeting, like who on the school district side is taking notes for this meeting. Somebody should be like me. And it may be the special education teacher, it could be the principal, it could be the IEP facilitator. Again, it varies by states. But somebody on that side should be taking notes for the school's side. And so, you can even, before the meeting even starts, you can just ask them, who is taking notes? Do you mind if I, get a copy when we're done, so I can have it for my records, and, I will let you make a copy of what I've written. So I don't think the school will have that big of a problem. I have done that before, and they didn't give me a hard time at all doing that. And I did like that a lot, because, then I had their notes. They had my notes, and then I made sure that I took good notes. This is one of the things too. It's great to take extra people with you, so that way if your meeting is not recorded, then bring somebody along who's a good note taker. Just, like, that's their job. They're here only to take really good notes and let them have that as a job. So that way you can focus on other things and you don't need to worry about taking notes. But it's important to take notes during the meeting, especially to kind of any key or pivotal decisions. And also know that for things that you are requesting for your child, we do have the prior written notice tracker form. So you can utilize that, and that potentially could help quite a bit too. So do be aware that's available also. And then, so Terry was saying, I was told no, sharing of minutes or recording. Really? Well, so that kind of shoots the whole transparency thing, right? How are we being transparent, especially when it's your child's IEP? That's not very transparent now, is it? I would almost want to send them an email and going, so, do you believe in transparency for parents for your school district? And just see how they respond. That's fascinating. They wouldn't share them with you. I don't understand really at all why they would not do that. Now, I understand the recording, but they should share any notes. Just, like I said, make a Xerox copy and hand them to you. But if you're able to record the meeting, and it sounds like you are, because if they're recording, then that means you're recording. Because the school district rarely ever records unless you're recording. So yeah, if you're recording, then that's good. I mean, at least you have that as a record. And I think that's a better record than the handwritten kind, because you can always keep going back and listening to the recording again and continue to fill out the notes that you had taken. Renee, hi Renee, glad you're able to join us this evening. And then Terry said, footnotes only on the IEP of what they were denying, etc. Wow. Yeah, like I said, that's really odd, because most of most schools are more into practicing transparency than that. So I find that really fascinating that that's not what they're doing. Anyways, so since you are recording it, I think you are still well covered, and I think that's great. Okay. So Renee was saying, thanks for your advice a few weeks ago. My son got ESY here in Michigan. Yay! That's great news. And I love to hear that. I love hearing good news like that. So if you do have success stories from information that you've gained out of the group, I love to hear those. So please let me know. But we've been talking a lot recently about extended school year services. And really, you should be talking about extended school year services like months ago, right? You really should be talking and having a meeting or some kind of discussion in either January or February, March at the latest, because, and by law, they're supposed to have that meeting early enough that if they deny you extended school year services, you have enough time to have a due process hearing and basically, take the school to due process and complain that they're not giving your child extended school year services. And traditionally, almost everyone will tell you that they hear, regression recruitment. That's it. And they hear that. And that's the only reason they give for giving extended school year services. But guess what? That's not the only reason for pretty much all the states except, I'm sorry for those of you who are in New York. New York, it does have a couple of other reasons, but it's really hard to qualify for extended school year services in New York. But most other states, there's anywhere between 10 to 12 listed reasons in your state's guiding documents. And so as people were in the IEP 504 group interested in that information and spoke up and asked questions about what their state's regulations and rules were, I would then go find those guiding documents for their state so that the parents can then use that information to go back to the school and then ask for extended school year services. And also know too that extended school year services are not prepackaged summer school per se. Now, their prepackaged summer school may meet the requirements for the extended school year service, but But the law says, right, that the extended school year services needs to meet the child's unique needs. So if it's not meeting their unique needs, then it's not extended school year services. So also be aware of that. That's kind of a little subtlety there. So, so Terry says, I have a question. I want to send my son to school with a hidden recorder. That's really scary. And she said in Mississippi, extended school years from January to April, that is in their budget. No, that is not what extended school year is. And I don't care if that's what their budget says. That's not in line with federal guidance. And I can give you what that guidance is, just so you know, okay? But in sending a hidden recorder with your child to school, though you may not be breaking state law, there might be school district policies in place that could cause you a problem. And you have to really watch it. Because even if you do get the information, potentially the school could then still press charges against you. And I've seen this happen. You know, I've read cases where this has happened to parents. So just be aware, right? I know, and we talked a little bit about this in the group. I know in taking any kind of like hidden video recording, that's definitely major no. But audio, it's not quite as clear cut often. But like I said, if your school district has a policy or something in place about it, that could be a bigger issue for you. So just be aware, and definitely never record stuff over the phone. That's like a whole different federal laws for wiretapping. And you need to be very careful about that and make sure you know what your state law is. And if you have questions, let me know, because often I do have that information already handy. So I just had my reminder go off. All children get ready for bed and brush their teeth.
All right, Mom. Okay. Jeez.
So I mentioned earlier, my husband is out and he's not feeling well. And I haven't heard back from him yet. So I'm waiting to hear what's going on with him. But in the meantime, children, go get ready. Okay, so let's see here. So Terry, I hope that answers your question. But like I said, do be very careful. One of the things you can do is just to Google, you know, like Mississippi, hidden recording, IEP or something like that, right? And see, has anybody done it in the state before? And then what happened? So that may give you kind of an indication, because I know there have been a few news stories I've read, and they were all out of the Northeast, where the school district wound up calling law enforcement on the parents. Now, in 3 of those cases, well, there were 3 cases. One of those cases, they did actually press charges. The other 2, they did not, because what they caught was so egregious that the school just let it go because of the public outcry. Anyway, so Renee, going back to extended school year services, she said, yes, data collection started at the start of the year, and I reminded and brought it up at every meeting, email, and conversation. Good for you. That's good. And that's unfortunately kind of what it takes, right? To kind of stay on the school to make sure they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. Let's see. And so Latanya said, so they told me that my kid didn't need extended school year services. I didn't think to fight for it. Wow, I should have fought. Maybe. And so it depends on what your state's, you know, like what their state law says as our qualifications for extended school year services. So you do want to look into that because, you know, and then what you can do is, all right, so you may not have it this summer, but you can definitely have it on your radar for next school year. And also know that extended school year services doesn't just mean over the summer. That also means like breaks. So like spring break or any other kind of like extended break over Christmas. It can be after the school day. So it's like extending in past the normal school day. So there's several ways extended school year services could be given to your child. It's not just a summer thing, okay? So Avani said, if I ask for a speech project, I think she meant pragmatic speech assessment, like social language, are they required to provide that? If they refuse to provide a school psychologist to go and do a full, yes. So you can add, okay. So when you turn in essentially, or you meet with the school and say, here are my areas of concern for my child that I want assessed, you can easily list social skills and list pragmatic language, figurative language, social reciprocity, and like for speech, so that we're carrying on a back and forth conversation and we're doing it in a way that's socially acceptable. Like I'm looking you in the eye, or at least looking towards your head, and that, we're talking back and forth and I'm following along and I'm giving an appropriate response when we're talking and all of those sorts of things. So yes, you can absolutely ask for those things. And is Avani, is your child, is that your daughter that you have? Because at this point in all that you've said, I'm starting to think, like, have you ever thought that she may have autism? I just wrote this post about girls and autism, and it was fascinating research about how girls with autism are diagnosed anywhere between 5 to 8 years later than boys. And it's because girls can, do good social masking, essentially. Girls manage to have decent enough social skills that unless you're looking carefully, you don't realize that, no, they're not doing it correctly, right? So this post was fascinating. It's on our website. Make sure you go and look if you haven't. It's www.aesa.group. Right? Whoop, there it is, right back here behind me. Here. So AESA.group. And it's in the blog section, and it's called Girls and Autism. And you can access that with just a free membership if you want, or with a bronze membership, then you can read all of the blog posts. Because I have a blog post on all kinds of great topics, including neuropsych testing domains, which a lot of people find really helpful and interesting, where I cover and discuss things like working memory, processing speed, fluid reasoning. So it helps you understand that when you get these test scores, like, what does it mean? How does it impact your child's learning? What are some appropriate accommodations for your child if they have these issues? Let's see. And then Avani too, make sure you post some of this in the group, because I'll have to come in later and I'll give you more links and information. And that way, I think that'll be really helpful for you, because she's also talking about adapted PE. And if your child needs adapted PE, it should be provided. It's helpful to know what are your state's qualifications for adaptive PE. Sometimes it's not very clear. A lot of states don't have it clearly written out. So that can be problematic too. There's a lot of things kind of going on with that. But anyways, I definitely can help you with resources and information for that. Let's see. Yeah, so Terry was saying, don't just fall for regression, right? So for that extended school year services, don't just fall for that whole regression recruitment thing. Like I said, pretty much every state out there has more requirements than just regression and recruitment for extended school year services. And then, yeah, so Terry said, extended school year services for extended day, ? And then she said, I tried that here. She's in Mississippi now. And she said in Boston, it's actually on the IEP as a checkoff if a child requires a longer day. How can you use extended services for a longer day during the school year? Well, honestly, it depends on your child, right? So part of what FAPE means is that a program is made for your child that's unique for your child. And that's the part they forget. The school forgets, right? They like taking these unique children and then trying to place them in pre-done programs they have set up. And sometimes that just doesn't work. The child's needs are unique enough that they don't and aren't getting true late FAPE in these pre-done programs they have set up. So then the school really should be reassessing and saying, what are this child's unique needs that need to be addressed, and how are we going to meet them? And so if your child does need a longer school day for some reason in order for him to obtain FAPE, then that's what the school should be supplying. And how that happens would be up to the IEP team in the school. And again, you would base it off of that, what FAPE says is that, this program is for their unique needs. And then also don't forget, with the Andrew case, we're talking about making sure that you have IEP goals that are what's called appropriately ambitious. I was just reading over a law brief about that, and I was like, oh, I like that a lot. So that's what, in this law brief it was discussing, is that these goals need to be appropriately ambitious considering the child's, disability, the severity of their disability, other potential disabilities the child has that complicates, the learning process, and et cetera. So you do need to take all of that into consideration, but the goals still have to be for that child appropriately ambitious for them. Isn't that interesting? Are your child's goals appropriately ambitious? They should be, because you should be the goals should be that they're making a whole year's worth of progress, like ideally, right? If your child is capable of doing this, they're making a whole year's worth of progress and a little extra. Because the idea is, and what the statute wants you to do, is to graduate the children out of special education services. And so you do that by raising their abilities or giving them the things that they need so they come up to the level that they can now go and be incorporated back into the general education population. That's the goal. So, does your child have goals like that? If not, then maybe they're not appropriately ambitious. Oh, so Avani was saying that her son is 6. Yes. So if he's 6 and does he have autism? Do you have a medical diagnosis of autism? Or are you trying to get an educational eligibility of autism? Or what is his current eligibility in school for his IEP? So is it developmental delay right now? We haven't talked about that, but it would be fascinating to know. So Rochelle said the school did a full evaluation. So for the triennial, I would guess it would be a reevaluation, right? Because now it's been 3 whole years, and the school tested, reassessed her child. And they wrote out the IEP without our input. Alrighty, how did that happen? And she said they presented the evaluation results and IEP and goals all at the same time. It wasn't a team approach. We weren't consulted at all. We were questioning a lot of the test results of the evaluation. So when I started asking questions, they wouldn't answer them. They said what was important that day was to tell them whether we were going to enroll our child at the school or not. Currently homeschooling in Minnesota. So that's the problem. Your child isn't currently a student. So it says, throughout our correspondence, the school keeps pressuring us to enroll. Are we supposed to be able to have input in writing IEP goals? Well, see, technically your child, they're not a student yet of the school. And so the school was wrong in making the IEP goals, because how can they do that if your child's not even enrolled? They shouldn't have gone that far. They only should have presented the testing results and nothing more at that meeting. So the other part that they did sounds like predetermination. So she was saying, is it wrong of our school to keep pressuring us to enroll the child in public school nearly every time we interact with them? No, they've got a good reason to do that. They're just trying to figure out, I think, what you're doing. It was very inappropriate of them, though, to create the IEP without you. They only should have presented the evaluation results at that meeting. And she said her child was diagnosed with autism contrary to the school's testing. All right, so, and I'll explain this here, I think, in just a minute. So I'm thinking you're saying he has medical autism, and the school did not find him eligible for educational autism. And they were saying that he doesn't qualify for autism in school because we homeschooled. Is that true? No, that's not true. So trying to figure out where to start with this. Okay, so let's back up. And I talk about this, I think, practically in every video that I make. So there's a difference between a medical diagnosis and educational eligibility. Those are different things, okay? So medical is like from your doctor, using your medical insurance, a medical therapist. You're just using your medical insurance. Mostly the medical diagnoses, they come out of the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, 5th edition. That's the most current edition. And it gives the criteria for autism. Okay, so with that said, there's also an educational definition for autism that's listed under IDEA. IDEA defined what autism is. Now, the federal definition of autism can be further refined through the states. So your state may have further refined that definition of autism, educational autism. And so what happens is when the school does an evaluation, like what they did for you, what the team is supposed to do, and you're part of the team, okay? So they did that without you, and they shouldn't have. But what they're supposed to do is to look at the evaluation results, and then they should look at all of the categories they have available for educational eligibilities, essentially, right, for special education services. Autism is one of the eligibility categories, but there's at least 13 others, because that's what IDEA has, the federal law. And then your state may have added some additional categories. And again, they're allowed to do that, okay? So you really should have discussed these categories. And that sounds like that didn't happen. You have to go back then and look at your state's eligibility categories, though. And I do have another blog post that's also available with the free membership, or like I said, you can sign up for that bronze membership. And hey, for the quarterly bronze membership, I do have that 30-day free trial with the promo code over here, AESA April. And then after that, it's just $10 a quarter, right? That's it. And it gives you access to all my blog posts. But one of the blog posts that I have for free this month, because it's Autism Awareness Month, is autism in the educational setting. And I think if you read that, it'll be very helpful, because I do go into quite a bit of detail explaining the differences between medical and educational autism and medical and educational therapy, because they're all a little different. And it's really important to kind of understand what these differences are. So anyways, just because he tested medically for autism doesn't necessarily means he meets the educational threshold for autism. Now, in the law, I don't believe it says anything about homeschooling. What it says is a lack of appropriate instruction. That's what it says. So what they're saying is they're blaming your homeschooling as being a lack of appropriate instruction. That's what they're saying. So if you have any proof or documentation that you provided and were providing appropriate instruction while you were homeschooling, then you want to bring that information with you, okay? And I can give you that law after we're done here this evening. Just repost in the group so it'll catch my attention, and I'll give you that information. And don't forget to put in what your state is. And I hope y'all don't take that personally. I don't ever remember. I helped so many different people from so many states. Like I forget. So if you would, please post your states when you post questions in the group. It's really helpful for me. So Terry was saying, you are part of the team, and if they made the decision even before you made it to the meeting, they were wrong. Yeah, so the school can draft an IEP with all the information based on what they have. And honestly, I like when they do that. I like it just because it lets me see what their game plan is. But it should clearly state draft on it when you get it, because I always get mine in advance because I asked for them in advance. Some states, they give it to you in advance. In Arizona, they do not. You have to ask for it, but usually if you ask for it, they'll give it to you. And I like reading them because, you know, it basically gives me what's their playbook. What are they planning on doing at this meeting? They've already tattled on themselves, essentially, right? So this gives me a chance to read through what they were thinking, read through their lines of thought and conclusions, and then help me put together what's going to be my rebuttal at the meeting. It's almost like debate class. Did y'all have debate class? I took just enough communication in college that I learned enough about debate. And ironically, my husband, part of what he teaches is English and communication and debate. So it's really good if you don't know a lot about debate, maybe to kind of do a little studying on it so that you understand and can, you know, formulate a really good rebuttal and show what your evidence is. And do know that in my blog posts, like it takes me a long time to write most of my blog posts, and it's because my blog posts are research-based blog posts, okay? A lot of people consider me an expert, and I do consider myself to be very knowledgeable. I don't know if I consider myself to be an expert, but I do write these blog posts, and I put in my blog posts hyperlinks to all the reference information in my posts, okay? Because you should never take my whatever I tell you as, you know, like the end all be all of whatever. It's not. I'm not. No, what you want to look at is, you know, what's the most authoritative source that you can cite. So often that's the federal law. After that, you know, it's your state law. It's peer-reviewed journal articles that you can access, especially peer-reviewed educational journal articles that you can access. Like, you know, I often read, there is a journal of school psychologists. So the Journal of School Psychologists, I try to get in there and like read as many things as I can in there. It's a very authoritative source. It's an educational source. So they can't go, well, it's medical. No, these are school psychologists. You know, it's a peer-reviewed journal article. So you want to get whatever is the best information, the most authoritative information that you can access. And then that's what you cite in your rebuttals with the school, right? Not quote me, don't quote Wright's Law, like say like, well, in Wright's Law's book, it says, no, don't ever do that. I actually had a parent tell me they did that, and then the IEP team laughed at her. And that's terrible. It's terrible that they laughed at her. I feel bad for her because she didn't realize, you know, you can't do that. You should be citing the law that the book talks about, but not the book itself. And it's really important, like I said, so you cite these authoritative sources. So I always try to make sure I give you that information. I give you whatever I can find that is the most authoritative source that I can find for you to use and cite. And I know a lot of people really appreciate that because I tend to have pretty good internet research skills, and I can find most information very quickly. And a lot of it I already have bookmarked and saved. So it's not the first time essentially I've kind of answered this question before. But anyways, we do also need to talk about predetermination. And if you search in the IEP 504 group and do like hashtag predetermination, you should turn up information in the group on predetermination so you can better understand where you may stand on a predetermination claim in this particular case. So, and then Terry was saying, yes, she does. So yeah, I really do. I mean, that's kind of, I think, pretty clear predetermination issue, and that shouldn't have been done. So David was saying hello. Hello, David. So does anybody else have any questions? Because like I said, unfortunately, I do have a cold, and I'm very sorry. Hopefully I'm sounding fairly clear for you guys, but I hope that has answered your questions for this evening. Does anybody else have any questions tonight that you would like me to answer? And then do know that I am in the IEP group in the evenings. So I do stop in the evenings, and I try to answer as many things as I can. And then you can also come on to AESA's site and purchase at least like a bronze level membership, which the bronze level membership, the yearly membership is $25. It's $25 for an entire year. And then that gives you not only access to all the blog posts that I have, but it also gives you access to the forum on the site. And so you can access the forum, and if you post questions in the forum on the site, that's where I will answer them during the day. So, because I'm trying not to spend quite so much time on Facebook. I love you guys dearly, but I've got like so many other things that I'm trying to work on at the moment that I can't stay on Facebook all day long like I used to. Okay. So if no one else has any more questions this evening, Terry said join the website. Yes, please do join the website. I'm really excited about not only the revamping, but one of the nice things too about all the membership fees, the money that were generated through the membership fees also goes to monetizing or putting funds into the Reed Scholarship. And I'm so excited about the Reed Scholarship and being able to provide a $3,000 scholarship to families to help them push their case to due process and to retain an attorney. And I think that's an amazing offer. And currently only Connecticut has even a somewhat similar program, and no other state has a program like that. And that's what my goal is to bring that program to every state. Because I think everyone, if the school district won't work with you, you've tried everything, everyone should have an opportunity to take the school district to due process. All right. So let me see. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions, and I thank you all for this evening. I'm going to wrap it up, and like I said, please join me in the Facebook on the IEP/504 assistance, and you can join in there and ask questions. Like I said, in the evening in there, I will come through and I answer questions. And don't let the fact that we're currently Arizona Exceptional Students Association deter you, because I do help provide advocacy, help, and advice to parents in all 50 states in the United States. So I hope to see you guys there, and I will talk to you next week. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Quiet. Loud people, quiet. Have a good night, YouTube.